Nova Kooks.
Hello. We need just a few moments of your time.
You guys feel warmed up?
I think that did it. Great question.
Yeah.
All right. Jingle jangles over there.
Yeah, for anybody that thinks I'm here drinking booze, this is like my treat night. So I have a Pepsi with ice. That's my thing.
That's my thing.
Let me jingle over here.
Soda pop.
That's jangling my ice cube.
Bow, bow, bow. Bow, bow.
All right, we're probably good. Let's just let her rip.
Little Hen says it's time to rock and roll.
Welcome, listener. You're listening to Nova Kooks. We are four East Coast surfers that don't take ourselves too seriously when it comes to surfing or other things. Hence our name, the Nova Kooks. In this podcast, you'll hear us talk about surfing on the East Coast of Canada and hear some funny stories from our inexperience along the way. This podcast is meant to not only take you on our surf journey, but to also explore personal growth, adventure, and the world around us, including pop culture and other topics. Today's episode is around exploring personal growth more than we have to date. We will base our conversation responding to a video that we were inspired by featuring an interview from Rodney Mullen. The video is on YouTube and is titled, How to Use Pain to Become the Best in the World, Rodney Mullen on Impact Theory. We will include all links to the videos mentioned today on our Instagram when this episode goes live. And as always, we will finish our episode with a surf tip and an always entertaining question from Charles. Before we begin, I am Jared, and I'll be your host. I'm seated with Charles, Josh, and David. Hello, fellers.
Hello.
Hi there.
Hello.
I have several questions I want you to consider.
To start off today, our warm-up question is, where we're going to be talking a lot about greatness today, and I'm imagining that we are also going to get very real and personal. So to help the four of us open up and get started on a positive note, also being the first episode recording back after the new year, I'm wondering what you guys are grateful for. That can be taken any way you want, whether you want to talk about a thing, a character trait of yourself, a skill, a journey, an adventure, a person. Let's kind of do the regular rotation if you're ready.
Oh, I'm going first. What am I grateful for? So I am grateful for how adaptable and resilient I am. And then I'm grateful for the people in my life that support me and prop me up and encourage me.
Nice.
Yeah.
Charles, are you ready?
Sure. What am I grateful for?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm grateful to have my health just with the past couple of years, like family and friends kind of experiencing some health issues. So always grateful for that. And you have your health. That's a, awesome baseline that you can take for granted. And I guess like on a like more personal or specific thing, and this kind of echoes a little bit of like what Josh was saying, but just grateful for the friendships that I have and the fact that, I have people that I can record a podcast with or go surfing with or make movies with. So it's sort of like those, that I have these interests, but I also have a group of people that encourage my interests and that I can be creative with.
Nice. Well said. David.
I would say I'm very grateful, obviously, for my wife and relationships that I have with friends and a wonderful family who support me. And I think in saying that, accept me. And I think for the longest time, I always thought, I don't know, for whatever reason, we'll probably dive into some of these things a little deeper later. I always thought I had to be perfect to attract people into my orbit, and the people that I'm really grateful for the people who are in my orbit, because I think they've seen me not perfect, and I love that they're still around and I can be not perfect and the best I can be, and they can challenge me and they're in my life still. So I'm really grateful for that.
That's a solid answer.
Yeah.
I
like that.
just started to learn about like sort of the toxicity of perfectionism. So
Yeah.
that resonates.
I think it's been a theme in my life. I really thought like, man, if I'm not perfect or if I'm not doing all these things for everyone else, they're not like, I'm going to lose these people. But the people who are in my circle and I don't know if it's age or, whatever that is. I know now that the people around me have seen me do silly things. They've seen me make mistakes, but they're still around and I can count on them, and they don't, I don't have to be perfect for them to be around.
Yeah.
Somebody said to me, and I've said it to others before, I'm here for all of it. Those are the people you want around you that are,
Yourself, Jared?
Yeah. Thanks, Charles.
I couldn't remember if you went or not. I was
No. I know I talk a lot here.
like so caught up in ourselves.
Well, obviously, I'm grateful for my family and friends, but particularly I'm really grateful for my daughter and the opportunity to be a father. And, my relationship with her is such an important thing in my life. And yeah, I'm super grateful for that. She's so cool, and watching her grow, and she, especially like she's because I've subjected her to the things that I'm interested in. She's taken an interest. She really is like a little mini me, and it's pretty awesome to see her grow and become better at everything than me. It's great. As far as myself, I think more personal note, I think I'm grateful for the time to realize that we have time to heal, we have time to think, we have time to breathe. And I think I'm grateful that I'm starting to, in my life personally, take the time to do those things. That's me. You guys feel warmed up?
I feel
Yeah.
I
Cozy?
think that did it. Great question.
Yeah.
All right.
You got me in the feels.
Next, please.
In our last episode, we watched Gleaming the Cube and talked a whole lot about skateboarding. And in Gleaming the Cube, we talked a bit about one of the Bones Brigade skaters that was featured in the movie, Rodney Mullen. Josh, not having the skateboarding background the rest of us had as teenagers, had his ears on and ended up, as you said, you went down a rabbit hole exploring more about Rodney Mullen. And the next day we get a text from Josh. We have to talk about this guy in the next episode. Watch this video. So before we jump into the video, a quick note on Rodney Mullen for those who don't know who he is. Rodney Mullen is known as one of the world's greatest skateboarders. He won his first World Skateboard Championship at the age of 14, and over the following decade, he won 34 out of 35 freestyle contests, thus establishing the most successful competitive run in the history of the sport. Over the following years, he turned from freestyle, translating his accumulated skills to a newer, different form of skateboarding. He is widely considered the most influential street skater in the history of the sport, having invented many, if not most, of the tricks used today, including the street ollie, kickflip, 360 flip, impossible, and many more. As a consequence, Rodney was deemed godfather of modern street skating and was featured in the Tony Hawk video game series, which featured his character over a span of 8 years. I also want to mention they're also like best buds. In their December 2006 issue, Los Angeles Magazine included him among their top 100 most influential people. He has been studied and written about for decades by skateboarders and sports writers alike. Most recently, Rodney's board was inducted into the Smithsonian. Beyond skating, Mullen studied math and engineering at the University of Florida before co-founding World Industries, which was the largest skate company in the 90s. His skating background combined with his more analytic interests have also opened the door to the TED community, giving talks at 2 TEDx's. Some of my favorite videos that listeners should check out if you want to learn more about Rodney is any of his winning runs in the 80s, particularly Rodney Mullen's freestyle contest in Del Mar in 1986. It's more like skateboard figure skating. He's literally like clacking his trucks down to the beat of the music. It's pretty awesome to watch. Also, his section of the 2001 Globe Skate video opinion, that was the first time I heard of Rodney Mullen and saw him skate, and it blew my brain. I thought it was amazing. Both of his TED Talks are available on YouTube as well as this really cool skateboard science interview with Physics Girl, where she interviews Rodney about the science behind his impossible trick. That one is particularly enjoyable. Again, all videos will be linked when this episode comes out on our Instagram. Today, we are going to look at him in a different angle, though, from skateboarding, although I'm sure we will talk about skateboarding a bit. In the video that we watched, again, it's called How to Use Pain to Become the Best in the World, Rodney Mullen on Impact Theory. And he was interviewed by Tom Bilyeu. As the Impact Theory interview goes on, he speaks on greatness, creativity, and mental health. And we're going to get into all of those things today. So Josh, thank you for sharing the video. And yeah, just maybe to start off, what made you so pumped on this video particularly and want to share it with us?
Yeah, solid introduction. That's there's a lot to be said about that guy.
Yeah, I hate talking so much sometimes, but I feel like people need to know.
Yeah, no, he's fascinating. Dave and I were talking before we came in about this interview and just how much time you can tell that he's spent thinking.
Yeah.
But he's come out the other side, like he's not lost in it. What he says is very concise and deep and resonates because he spent all that time sort of in the chaos zone and came out the other side and has it together.
I also love hearing how he talks.
Oh, yeah.
Because he's so passionate and he like laughs and gets so excited about simple things, but he sees them as more than simple. You can tell intelligent folks because they often have a cadence to how they speak. And the way he speaks and then the way, if you ever heard Stuart McLean, the pulses the way he speaks, like the cadence of it is fascinating to me. Like it pulls you in. I feel the same way about Rick Rubin.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I could hear him talk.
Yeah, that's fair.
But the reason I was interested in him, I have a fascination with people that tend to push limits to begin with. So endurance to a certain extent, but more so in the discipline space. There's plenty of ultra marathon runners and that sort of thing. And it's interesting. I couldn't do distance running. Jared's done a marathon. I could never do that. But I can resonate with chipping away at something piece by piece by piece by piece. And Rodney Mullen falls into that space of he's just out there doing the work consistently, day after day. He's gotten some encouragement, but for the most part, he doesn't care. There's some details in the talk. He speaks of how he skates from 1 a.m. until 3. That's his time. That's when people leave him alone. That's when he can focus on developing the skill.
That wasn't in this one. That was the other.
Oh, maybe that was in something else.
But that's something that he's always done. It was before. I think when he was younger, he would skate for like 8 hours from like 1 till 8 in the morning. Yeah.
And I'm just fascinated by people that can push everything else out. Rodney Mullen decided, I'm going to skate. This is what I do. Mm-hmm. All the pressures of life, of needing to make money and all of these things, or have a career, or go to school. He knew this was his thing. And some people have that in life, and it's fascinating to me. And the other thing about that sort of character, he's not out there telling you how awesome he is. He's just at the grindstone, sharpening his knife and getting sharper and sharper and sharper and sharper. And,
we'll get into
Jimmy Chen's another example, same sort of thing. Yeah. Extreme discipline, mountain climber, fascinating story. Alex Honnold. And if you get into musicianship, like Jeff Beck just died.
Yeah.
Jeff Beck is exactly the same category as these guys.
And John Frusciante, I'd say, all he does is play music.
Yeah.
That's all he.
I just wrote his name in my notes because I've got some parallels. Yeah.
Yeah. So just that fascination of, it's almost like this quiet power, or this. It's hard to describe.
Yeah. Well,
that's what pulled me into them, to talk about him.
Well, I think it's great too. And also, we all, I think in the past episodes, we've talked about mental health before. And I think this really echoed with a lot of our thoughts on mental health and coming out the other side of hard moments, because he definitely did. And he's so humble when he talks about it. And we'll get into that in a little bit. the way that I kind of want to go through the video is just maybe we can just kind of go from sort of beginning to end of the video and just talk about it as the different topics in the video came up, because I think it's all really gold.
Sure.
So the first section was talking about the barrier of disbelief. So he talked about breaking the concept of impossible things. How he he was kind of relating it to himself, how people say he invented these tricks. He's the first person to do these things. And he kind of is just speaking to how it just has to be done once. Like you said, Alex Honnold, so many other people have free climbed that mountain since he proved that it could be done, and they've done it in way faster time, right? I think.
I don't know if anyone's done, I think it was El Cap, he did free climb, no ropes, nothing. I don't know if anyone else has
but there's
done.
other,
Possible,
I can't speak specifically, but I remember in that Jimmy Chan video that they were talking about how like the game just keeps getting upped, like someone proves it and then another person will do it. And then, and that's kind of like, that's everywhere. People, the 4 minute mile, I think he said that once you break that, there's new, in the marathon, that guy I watched this amazing documentary of this Nigerian guy, I can't remember his name, who ran the fastest marathon, and he trained and had like people helping him like a flying V to do it.
Cool.
And then someone else beat him like recently. So
it's just cool. It's like the stacking of discovery, but it takes the Rodney Mullen to then have somebody else stack on top.
And he said,
stack on top.
Yeah, and he said that those people that break that barrier are more rare than it's a more rare thing than actual like talent. Not to say that they aren't talented people, but it's interesting.
Yeah.
More mindset over physical.
Yeah.
Well, and that goes back to what we said at the beginning about just being supported or not being a perfectionist.
Right.
And the thing he said in the interview was you said barriers of disbelief, but he said rarely a question of talent or ability, but a question of belief. And that's exactly what he does. He just goes out and keeps trying. He thinks of something, and he just does it until he figures out how it should feel, how it should go.
Well, it's funny because he thinks in this, like in the early hours of the morning when he's practicing by himself and no one's watching, there's no judgment. He's thinking like that isolation gives room for, he said this too, isolation gives room for creativity, and how it's so interesting how he speaks about a sport, like a physical sport, like an artist speaks, and he's turned skateboarding into more than just a sport, but an art. It's cool. Kind of along the same lines of doing these, like the barrier of disbelief is, he also said a bad thought is, if it can't be proven, then it can't be possible. And he likes to break that down. And like you said, David, he changes the mindset. And I liked how he said he likes to set get a new set of axioms, how they happen when someone does change it. So like, I just think it's cool. Like, the McTwist. So someone did, he did that guy, McGill did the McTwist, and then everybody could do the McTwist, but then Rodney was like, how do I do that on flat ground? And it's like getting inspiration from it to make it bigger and keep it moving, progression moving. It's cool.
Like, honing a talent, but if you don't believe in your abilities, like you can't make those sort of jumps that set people apart, like the Rodney Mullens or the Laird Hamilton who made that hydrofoil surfboard, or like,
man, I want to try one of those.
Yeah, I think it is kind of like, I guess what you're saying is having that time alone to focus and imagine something, how something could be different, or something that hasn't been created, and the discipline to kind of try and fail, but eventually potentially succeed. But it's like any invention, right? Like there are certain things that didn't exist, like flying in an airplane and whatnot. Like that is impossible, but it is possible, right? So, but at some point that would have seemed crazy to someone. So
it makes me think of something that resonates really personally. Like everybody knows I've played guitar and like had dreams of recording and doing all kinds of things. But I've often had like a disbelief in whether or not that can happen or whatnot, or various things like work gets in the way or like social engagements get in the way. And I've recently come to realize the frustration and the anger that comes out of not protecting that space. So it's something I want, yet I let everything break down the boundaries of doing it. Whether it's work gets in the way or social engagements or that time I set aside where I was going to be creative, I just let other things intrude into it. And I'm now realizing, I'm not an angry person, but I've realized that it actually creates a lot of frustration and anger in me because I keep getting pulled away from the things that actually deeply fulfill me. And I've only recently discovered this, but like it's created a lot of frustration in my life. And now I'm like, oh,
Right.
like you have to create that isolated time. It's, if anything, we had a conversation as a group before we started recording about social media and how it just bombards you. It's the same thing. You just have to have that space to replenish and think and be left alone and not have to cater to someone else or try to match up to something you're seeing or being told to do on social media, or, you need that space.
And I think that kind of ties into something that he talks about like later on in the videos, but he talks about like throwing away like all his trophies.
we're gonna get to that.
Because he kind of, it was like he was like just chasing that expectation or that goal, and he became disconnected from the joy of just skateboarding. But it's something that I thought about almost in the reverse angle of it, where sometimes there's certain things that people really enjoy, whether that's playing music and whatnot, and they may talk themselves out of it because they're not great or getting trophies for it, so to speak. But it's just sort of like, what is the reason or motivation that you do something? I mean, it should ideally, I think that's something that's nice that he touches on. It's just like the purity, like his love of skating, and that is kind of the heart of what everything comes from. So whether
He comes back to that.
Yeah, and whether
Centers him.
you're great at something or not, it shouldn't be about it. It shouldn't be about a measurement of success or not success. You should surf, you should play music, you do whatever you like, because
Absolutely.
it's something that you have a passion for, right? Like it gives you pleasure, and then keep chipping away at it. It can grow into something else, but that should be the heart of it. So that was something I found interesting.
It's huge. And it goes right back to you and that mention of needing to be perfect or whatever it is.
Absolutely.
That has had such an impact on me playing guitar or making music or doing anything with it that sometimes it's so toxic in me. I'll pick up the guitar and be pissed off at myself and put it down. And how do you get better?
Right.
If you can't just do it for the love of doing it,
Yeah.
how do you get better? It's like if you wanted to get in shape, but you're so pissed off that you're not in shape that you never start exercising.
Yeah. It's a big trap. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can also lose sight of how far you've come, where, it's like the younger version of you be like, whoa, like you're pretty great on that guitar now. Like, but just, we kind of lose track of things, right?
And that's just the hard thing about growth. You don't realize how far you've come until you have some sort of benchmark, or you've set a goal and you've worked at it. It's things, that is the hard part about all of it, is that it's a slow grind to, I don't even know what the word is. You're not conquering anything. You're just continually evolving.
And that's going back to, if we're talking about like social media or media in general, and this is, we talked a bit about this here around when we watched the Ben Gravy film, but it was like, his quest, but like all of the hours of travel and editing and everything that was put into it, like you don't realize sometimes the amount of work that has to go into something. But why do you do that grind? Because it's something you're passionate about and love, ideally.
Yeah. I don't want to drag this up, but I have to make one point. This is another thing I've realized. I've always wanted to make music, but in media, we always see some famous star musician that says, "Oh yeah, this song came out in 15 minutes," or "Oh, we're recorded this one afternoon on the tour bus and recorded it. And oh yeah, it ended up being our number one hit. And like, that's sometimes true, maybe 1 in 100 times, but it's a bit of a curated story. But as like going from learning the guitar as a 10 or 11 year old to, I mean, even recently.
But there's variables in that they don't talk about.
That's what I'm getting to, is that it's a grind to write a song. It's hard.
I bet.
And it's not always enjoyable, but like Rodney Mullen doesn't love all 3 hours of skating every night. I guarantee it.
No,
It's a love-hate relationship, and getting caught up in that message that I've seen my whole life has kept me from just doing something I want to do. Whether I think I suck, so I don't pick up the guitar, I don't try to write a song because I heard it takes 15 minutes and I'm not that person. I'll never be that person. Well, how am I ever supposed to get better?
Work.
Yeah. And so it's just like that. Yeah. That just caught me as like the full sort of circle of toxic perfection that you hinted at.
Yeah.
Sorry for ranting.
It's okay. It's all on topic.
This will be the first 3-hour Nova Kooks podcast.
The last one was pretty good.
Next, please.
So the next section that they sort of went into, it was sort of titled Formless, and he went into talking about a little bit more personal. He said winning feels good, but then you're protecting. And he said getting to be the first in that world of contests puts you on the treadmill of winning like the hamster on a wheel. It militates against progression, this like pattern of consistency.
You're playing it safe because you know what'll win.
Yeah.
Because you already know you had the discipline to be better than for the competition.
Yeah.
So then you don't push your limits because you know maybe you won't be as good as that new thing you're trying. Yeah.
And then it says getting what you want. He said getting what you think you want and how that pushes you into a groove or painted into a corner and you start guarding it. And then he ended it with this Nietzsche quote, what's left for you when you make it to the top but lightning. And that, guys, spoke to me. Like,
I'm curious how you interpret the quote because I think I get it, but then other times I'm confused as to whether I get it.
So the way that I connected with this whole section of the video, this is when I really clued in and was like, did Josh send this to me on purpose? Because I haven't talked publicly about this, or like even to a lot of people, like even some friends, I haven't talked a lot about it, but I recently, well, not recently now, I'd say just about a year ago, I left my career that I spent 16 years in, to be personal, but to keep some stuff close to my chest. I was in a leadership position in my past job, and I really enjoyed the beginning of my career a whole lot. And it's not that I wasn't happy with parts of it all the way till the end, but I got stuck in this ego thing, and I even saw it happening and was like, no, that's not what this is. I'm doing this because I want to make a difference. And, one person sort of planted this seed that, you'd be really good in this leadership position. And then this other person said to me, I got an email about this leadership course. You should take this. And then I was like, well, everybody's telling me that's where I'm supposed to be. So the attention kind of felt good, felt like the likes on Facebook or whatever. And I started on the journey, and I learned a lot. And it's not that I didn't enjoy that journey, but it brought me to a place where I was trying to affect change and found myself just in this impossible position. And I can't say that ego wasn't a part of it, but I was in this position that I thought I could affect change, and then realized that I really couldn't. I was just another, spoke in the wheel. And speaking of wheels, I did feel like the hamster on the wheel. And I just couldn't find
your place, find what was fulfilling.
Yeah, I wasn't being fulfilled, and I wasn't feeling like I was affecting the change that I had hoped to, and I got stagnant. And when I hear that quote, what's left for you when you make it to the top? Well, I was in a pretty, in my view, at the time, I was in a pretty top position, and there was lightning there for me. The world kind of crumbled, and to speak more plainly, like it started affecting me as a person, like the stress in my life. I felt like I wasn't being a present husband or a present father. And I had this one spark moment where I just at the dinner table heard myself talking and saw myself really clearly. And that's not who I wanted to be. I was a little lost. And yeah, I've spent the last year sort of digging myself out of that and reshifting. And like we're going to say later, kind of, another parallel I saw with Rodney was like coming back to what started you, and when I started my career, it was all music. And that's kind of, you're speaking about music, and that's what's been happening to me is I'm finally like getting to like go back to my it. And like I said earlier, and gratefulness, I'm grateful for the time to be able to do it. So
yeah. Absolutely. I have 2 questions for you.
Yeah.
Do you think it was ego, or do you think it was status? Or do you think those are one and the same? Or are they very intertwined in that space?
I think you just said it. Yeah. They kind of are the same in a way for me in that. And I mean, I always try my hardest to lead my life with humility and stuff, but like Rodney said in this, like it does feel good to get noticed, and it does feel good to win. And, my trophy was being accepted into that role and passing the interviews, and man, I felt on cloud 9 in those moments, but that's just the same as like he said about you get an Academy Award and now what? And
yeah. And
that was sort of, I saw parallels in that. It was like, so I'm here and now I'm doing this work, but it's not fulfilling. It kind of sucks. Like, it's hard and thankless, the role that I was in. I was a servant to like, the people I was managing basically. And there was no people weren't, there was no appreciation for the things. I became like this, I felt like I was like pulling the strings of making things happen for people, but people didn't see it. And it's not that I was needing that, but I didn't need, what am I trying to say? I didn't need the gratification.
You didn't need to be, yeah.
Right. But I was like killing myself. I felt like I was killing who I was. And
when you're putting that level of effort in, I think you need to be acknowledged at some level. You need some level
There's gotta be a
you need some sort
there.
of feedback from it. You can't just give and give and give and give and give.
Yeah.
So I have one comment and then my next question. A similarity I've noticed as I've moved through my career as well is that when I sought out those status pieces or thought that when I get there, I'll be good enough, it was never right because I was looking for external validation for someone or something to tell me that I'm worthy. And then I got there and I'm like, this doesn't feel like I thought it would. This is draining. This is exhausting. This isn't what I wanted. And the mistake I realized that I made, and I think you're talking about something similar, is that I was looking for other people or other things to validate me. I was looking for an income or a title or a vehicle that people thought, okay, this guy's got his shit together. And in reality, I just needed to be good enough myself.
Yeah.
Regardless of all of those external things. If I don't think I'm worthy, none of those are going to replace that. That was just a comment. The lightning thing. Do you think that what's left for you when you get to the top but lightning?
Striking you down is how
so
I took
that's
it.
my
I took
question.
it as a negative.
Do you take it as the destruction? This is everybody. I'm asking everybody.
That's how I took it.
I think that's how he meant it when he said
I was kind of picturing it as torment.
Yeah.
Maybe like the lightning is
too.
like I'm trying to maintain this status, so I'm kind of fixated on that. I don't want to fail. That was one, but
and I got to say,
one take.
In this world that we live in with social media and we all care so much about what people think about us, just as a species of as humans. You care about what people think about you, and a lot of my anxieties around this, I'll tell myself stories that probably aren't true about what people are thinking or how people are viewing me, or like, do the people that I worked with feel like I've let them down, or I feel sometimes like I've let them down, or but when, to again make another parallel, Rodney talks about throwing away his trophies. I feel like it took me a long time, but I was able to throw those negative thoughts and feelings away throughout the year. It's taken me almost the entire year to throw those away. Those stories,
there's always residue of them.
Yeah. But I think I'm now in a place where I'm using them when they come up and bubble up in my thought processes. I try to like focus on the positive lessons that they have for me, rather than that salty feeling, like, what did I do last night? What did I say? What I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
As much as I say, like, I understand the external validation part now, I still find myself like viscerally noticing me looking for approval on something I did, or feedback, even at work. It's like, oh, you thought that presentation was good? And depending on who it came from, like, I still notice that there's parts of me still looking for an external validation. But anyway, the lightning thing, all I'll say about it is that I wasn't sure if it meant torment or like destruction, or like that's it, or if it meant like, that's the next piece, like you
level up,
skyrocket into like that level of like energy, or the gods, or like, do you know what I mean? Right. And I know that seems ridiculous, because I totally get that it's like you'll just get blasted off the top. But for a minute I was like, well,
it's transformational.
Is it transfer like
new dimension of
can you
physics
can you get to the top, and then is there
lightning.
Another transformational piece where you keep at it and you get to like the gods, or Zeus, or whoever was like the
I
lightning.
think that's funny, because that's the misconception, I think personally, that you're chasing this cherry.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And we've talked about it before, like the journey or the destination. The journey it's all part. I think about this question like all the time, like, wait, am I enjoying the journey? I talked to you guys about being at the beach. I went to the beach. What day is it? Yeah, I went to the beach yesterday, and I was like having a hard time. Like, it took me a second to like shift to like be there. You know what I mean? And enjoy that journey that I'm here now. Be there, smell it, feel it. Like, let's go. Let's get in the water. But yeah. I feel like you're missing it if you're just looking at that cherry the whole time. You're missing it all.
Yeah.
That's my story.
And I think
anyway.
it's a misconception even thinking that there is a top.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think so many things are built on this idea of, we're on a road to this one thing. And I think what we've maybe all are sort of echoing a little bit is, it's not one thing. It's a notch on a never-ending path, depending on how you feel about, where life goes. However, to think that there is one apex, I think we're learning that that's not the thing. Yeah. It to your point, it's the journey. Yeah. There's been so many times to reiterate of what some sentiments you guys have said, where I thought, if I just get this degree, I'll have it made in the shade. If I can just do this thing in sports, done.
But it's that pressure.
Never done.
It's that pressure from other people too. You see other people doing these things, and it feels like that's, we're peers, so I should probably have that too. And you see it on like Instagram and Facebook, all the social media stuff. You see people doing things like, you talk about music, you see peers of yours who have released music. Oh, well, I can do what they do. Why haven't I done this? We get stuck in comparing and
relativity
and the thing
versus
that social media takes away is the backstory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we said this earlier tonight, that on social media, all everyone's trying to do is get your attention. So it's like everyone's trying to tell you how epic they are. You don't know the backstory. The friend of ours, the hypothetical friend that put out music, for example. We have friends that have put out music, but I'm not talking about any of them in this context.
A lot of friends that have put out music.
But I don't know the backstory.
Yeah.
They don't know my backstory. There's a reason I haven't put out anything.
Yeah.
I could whine about it, but like everybody's got a backstory, and that's what's taken away from us. Like us now as this digitally connected social media culture, that's what's taken away. We have no perspective, and we all just think shitty of ourselves because there's no backstory to anything.
Yeah.
It's just all up front how awesome everyone is. Scroll after scroll after scroll.
And relate,
I think that's definitely one element, and definitely an unhealthy element of it, but also there's a democratization of the fact that, we can create this podcast. We could, you can put music out there. There's, and who knows what will go viral or turn into something. This is something we kind of like spoke about with the whole Ben Gravy thing as well, where we're sort of like, where he's kind of like doing those more kind of like stunt videos at first, right? He was kind of like trying to like chase after that. But then he kind of realized, after he went through his hardship, kind of like, no, well, surfing's the thing I'm really passionate about, and was able to find this here focus. So it is this like 2-level thing where, I mean, you can get distracted with these videos and you can kind of look at like people having success, but it's also an outlet where people can be creative and release things.
I've focused solely on the negative side, but you're totally right. It's an avenue, I guess. And I'm here preaching about this, but even our podcast is going to be edited. So, I just think we need to create that space for ourselves that I talked about before.
I think it's important for people to be, educated and aware in terms of like media and the fact that this isn't someone's life. This is their like kind of profile piece, whatever. Like this has been heavily edited, or even the pieces where, a band could be saying like, oh yeah, we wrote this one on the bus in like 5 minutes or whatever. It's, that's a good kind of, catch piece in terms of like,
totally
how they're publicizing things.
Totally. And I'm not ragging on them for that. Who knows if I had become a rock star, I'd probably be saying the same stuff.
Right.
So, well, I didn't. So I guess I'm trying to communicate the realities of what has held me back.
But it's also but I totally agree with the, when people are posting stuff on social media, like people typically post, positive things like, oh, I'm doing this cool thing, or, you're selecting the best photograph to put up there. Right. So it is this, we're all curating like the best vision of our life. And, if you're scrolling through kind of like what everyone is up to, you're kind of like, oh, well, I'm
doing nothing.
Yeah.
People that don't know me, that follow me on social media, probably think I have a totally different life than I do.
Well, because people have to fill in the blanks for the
that's what I'm getting at.
You have to tell a story of someone.
Whatever you call that, if that's my
and that's all based
digital
on
life, or
and that's all based on their experience with people that do similar things as you, so they fill in the holes.
And they see it through their filter, but anyway.
You're a good guy, Josh. It's okay.
You're a good guy, Josh. I don't care what everybody else says.
Yeah. You do you, bud.
Next, please.
I liked how he said, he was kind of speaking about his issues a little bit. There was a hint to it, his story of growing up, and how he says how, don't be told what to do. And when you stop being told what to do, you can be creative. I kind of like that. And, and then he started talking about to nurture your issues. And his vessel is skateboarding when he's nurturing his issues. But what he's talking about, you guys know the history, his background, right? Like his I guess his father, maybe a mother a little bit, supported his father there, but they didn't want him skateboarding. They thought that he was, that was bad. Like, you're bad if you skateboard. I remember that as growing up too. My dad didn't want me skateboarding, and I remember it being a really big thing because he just didn't want, skateboarders get arrested from graffiti and waxing up curbs. And
I remember that too. I always wanted to skateboard and I never did. Partially because I lived in the middle of nowhere. Where would I skateboard? But the messages I've gotten were always like, you get hurt, or like you can't skateboard. And so I never pushed the limits of getting one, even though I really liked the culture, loved the shoes, loved the music.
Yeah.
Even now, I'd love to have a skateboard. And now I'm living within confines again of like, well, I don't want to be that old guy that's trying to skateboard.
I love skateboarding even still. Like, I don't do tricks because my body won't allow
my
it.
hips are old and shot.
Sure.
Well, I mean, I didn't keep that fitness for this sport like Neen Williams or Rodney Mullen, you know. But I don't want to fall. I don't want to know how to duck and roll
things hurt a little more now.
Yeah, I'm not into that.
They seem to. I
need to be able to chase after a little kid.
Also, like, skateboarding is a sport that is hard on you.
Oh yeah.
I wonder if that's like the effects I'm having now with my body is because of skateboarding.
I don't know. There's another, for those that are listening, there's another interview with Tony Hawk has a podcast called Hawk and Wolf, where they interview Rodney Mullen, and they're all just going on about their injuries on their bodies and the pain they have. Yeah. And a guy named Jason Ellis is getting stem cell treatment to deal with his pain.
My goodness.
And Rodney makes the comment about his pain, and he just says, you know, I got a lot of miles on me.
Yeah.
Well, and he talked about that in here too.
Yeah. And I think Tony Hawk is nursing a broken leg that didn't heal.
Well, so he broke his leg, he snapped it, and he sent pictures online, and you see the fracture, it's cracked, but then they like pinned it up, and then like 3 or 4 weeks later, he's skating on it again.
Yeah, he pushed it a little hard there.
And then he's like ruined himself, I think. Fearful of it anyway.
And Rodney, I'm calling him by his first name, my buddy Rodney.
Yeah, that's fine.
He tells a story because they asked him about his injuries and like how he feels. And he was like, you know, one day I was on a plane and I got off, we landed at the airport, and I was walking, and they asked him like, how's he get along? And he said, I was at the airport and somebody came up to me and asked me if I wanted a wheelchair.
Oh wow.
Wow.
Because of the way he was walking.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of how he set the tone of how he is.
Yeah.
Like has a functional body. Like I'm
he
sure
still skateboards.
Yeah, he still skateboards. He's fine, but and his big message is until the wheels come off.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is fantastic. But it was interesting in that interview when he was talking about an injury he had. I can't remember if it was his leg where it meets the hip or whatever. And
he kept pointing to his arm, but
I couldn't quite tell. But his story recounting how he basically took it upon himself to wrench his arm around a fire hydrant or something.
To break his scar tissue.
Break the scar tissue, and he was like, and then I learned how the, you know, where the pain was and how the striation, like I was just like, this guy thinks in depth about things I've never dreamed about.
Viscerally feeling the scar tissue separate from his body.
He said that,
And just the message or the way he spoke at that time when they asked him about it, and he kind of looks off in the distance and says, yeah, that was a dark time.
Well, that's kind of, I feel like that was the purpose for the title of this video. How, you know, what is it? How to use pain to become the best in the world.
Sounded painful.
Yeah, because he was talking about it just so people kind of understand what his whole view of it. He was, you know, bones were grinding, calcifying, and sticking, and he talked to a surgeon, and they were like, looked sad in his eyes, and basically were saying like, you know, we can't do anything for you because if we cut you open, we create more scar tissue, and it's just like.
Yeah, and his comment to that, I wrote it down. I thought it was good, but he said, desperate people do desperate things.
Yeah.
And I was desperate and I needed to break free. And that's when he just started digging deep into this whole scar tissue thing. And I can only imagine how painful that was.
Yeah,
And he was saying like,
But
like an hour to 2 hours a day of just beating at this scar tissue. No, and
well, he had like a
obviously not.
tool, like some.
He did, but remember he said, I found a way to angle, it was his leg.
Yeah.
And I found a
The
way
curve
to
of a
like
fire
use the
hydrant.
fire hydrant to dig in because of the sides on it. He found a way to dig in and press against the scar tissue and then leverage of leaning back over it.
Oh my goodness.
He's just,
Yeah. It's funny because I always think of Andy Anderson as like his own person, but almost like the second coming of Rodney Mullen in a way. Like, do you know what I mean? Because he's one of those pioneers of changing the sport again, turning it into this beautiful art, and he uses fire hydrants as a vessel for his art, because he'll do a trick where he ollies up on a fire hydrant and will spin on the center of his board on a fire hydrant. And
Oh, wow.
he's done this so much that it's become like his logo, and the fire hydrant.
So cool.
For
that's an
what's
impressive
his
trick.
what's his business? Mind something?
Mind control products or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
But an interesting connection there with
Yeah.
the fire hydrant. Yeah.
But Josh, this pain stuff, when I was watching that part, when he was talking about it, I thought of you, because he was talking about it as he went through that, and like he was saying how he like found joy in it, in that pain. Like, and I thought of you you always say type 2 fun. We've talked about that on the podcast already, but it's funny how this painful thing that he went through, he was able to still find joy in it and speak positively about it in the end. He's so unique.
It's fascinating. I'm still learning, and that the pain piece can be used in a bunch of different avenues, because to a certain extent, like his pain was breaking down scar tissue, but pain can be had through exercise, through paddling hard and surfing, through Dave, you doing your triathlons, you doing your marathons. Like when you keep at it, you discover a space within that discomfort that just opens up this whole other avenue.
You know, it's funny that you say that, because I was thinking about this on the drive down here. My daughter is learning how to play the violin right now. And there's this thing with kids where I call it trying to develop grit and being able to get through a hard moment. Like when you have a hard multiplication problem in your homework or something, and you want to give up and scream, or this paper's never going to end or whatever. My daughter learning the violin, she was having a really hard time because her fingers just wouldn't do what she wanted to do, and she was getting so frustrated. She got very like emotional. I just sort of stopped and told her, like, look, you're in a safe place right now. Like, you're okay. You're allowed to not have it right now. It's okay. You've never played this piece before tonight, and this is okay. And just think about how good it's going to feel when you get it and it sounds good and it all locks in. It's going to be a magical feeling, and you're going to feel like you earned it because it was this hard. And
That feeling itches on the inside, though.
It sucks.
Yep.
But don't you wish you could find a way to just remember to say that to yourself when you're having that moment? Like, I said this to her so simply, and then my wife's like, "What's that? Kettle?"
Right. Put it on a t-shirt. Yeah.
Yeah. It was funny. Yeah.
So easy to tell other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But speaking about all this, today my osteopath, I've running and skateboarding and just using my body, because that's, why wouldn't I do all the things I want to enjoy? But I've got some miles on my body, and I go to an osteopath, and she had this moment with me today, and it was like this get real conversation. And I know she was just talking to me purely about my physical body, but I got a little emotional when she said it, and it's a little bit contradictory to like Rodney's story with his pain. But she said like she knows how I want to do all the things and get through the journey of all these things and get to the destination and be successful and attain my goal. But sometimes you have to give yourself time and be patient and go slower, focus on just like one small thing at a time, and feel it, and then you move on. And she was talking about healing my back and my injury. But when she said it, because I don't know if it's because of us talking about this video or what, but it felt like a bit of a reality check for me. I was like, I hear you. Slow down, go slow, take the time.
Yeah. I see what you're saying in terms of like a bit of dissonance created by those two statements of what Rodney says and what.
Well, because he was like grinding it out. He's like, I must heal, must heal, must heal.
Well, he was, but to a certain extent, they're both the same thing because he was giving his body time. But he needed to influence that space, whereas your body, I don't think you're up against scar tissue. I just think that you have soft tissue patterns and things like that.
I got some scar tissue, but
fair enough.
I'm getting through it.
But there's a fine line, and I think we've all learned this, where you need to stop pushing and look at it holistically as what does my body need? Do I need to heal? Do I need to rest? Do I need to exercise? Do I need to not move, stretch, drink water, sleep, instead of just thinking I need to run, or I need to go to the gym, or I need to surf, or I need to ride my bike 42 kilometers 3 times this week because that's what this app I'm using tells me.
Right.
I feel like that's the message she was getting at, is listen to your body intuitively.
Yes, and she was speaking, and she was speaking to me because I'm the guy that's like, it's a beautiful day, I'm going to go run, or I'm going to go surf, or I'm going to go do both because I just want it all. I want to drink it all up. But it's sort of like a reality check. It's okay to slow down, and you need to. But I also looked at it as a parallel to other things, like slow down. You know, you don't have to write a whole album all at once. Just focus on the verse of one song.
You can take 12 years to do one song.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But Charles, you brought this up. I'm glad that he goes on to talk about his trophies being thrown away, and he talks a little bit about his issues. He says, I am what I am, not what I was, and others are progressing the sport now. And he has a blank canvas after he threw his trophies away. He was allowed to recreate. He was allowed to reform who he was. His effect on the sport and changing folks' lives by being an inspiration. He said that's his trophy, you know?
Yeah, I really like the comment that he made where he said he helped to contribute to the language of skateboarding.
Yeah.
That's with the tricks that he developed, it's a language that people speak and expand upon. So I thought that was a nice way of putting it.
The last really big section that he kind of went into was he talked about the Make-A-Wish Foundation, and I really liked that. I liked hearing how passionate he was and how humbled he was by kids that just wanted to spend some time with him, and I thought that was so cool. Make-A-Wish is, you guys have seen the video, but Make-A-Wish is all about, making kids that are, it's like their last big wish, and where they're young, they'll ask for things that a child's mind would ask for, like
what's important to them, or their heroes and stuff like that.
To meet their childhood hero, like Batman. And there's a cool video that he mentioned.
Yeah.
Have you seen that?
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
Like they made a little kid's dream come true. He was Batman and solving a crime. It was really cool.
Didn't they take him to the police station and stuff?
Yeah.
Or something? Yeah.
It was really it was really touching, and
a lot of people and energy went into making that dream. You just think of all the things that came together to make that one thing for that one kid. So cool.
And Rodney had a hard time phrasing it in his mind when he was going into the hospital because the kid wanted to meet him. And then the kid hugged him and he was like, oh, this is so powerful. I'm going to be what this kid needs me to be because this kid is amazing. And I don't know. That was really, really cool. And to meet your heroes, right? And he's a hero.
Right.
And he's so humble that I don't know if he'd ever be able to really accept that he is that to so many people.
And to think the way
cool.
that he spoke about it so with such great feeling and eloquence and described it almost emotionally, and you think about, all of the, putting it against trophies and number ones and stuff. I bet you his feelings toward those, I mean, maybe the first one was breaking the ceiling, but never connected with anything like with that child in that moment. Versus competitions and all these extrinsically motivated competition and whatnot. It comes down to a moment of a stranger hugging him that he probably is more thankful and has more deep feelings about that than anything else could.
Yeah. It's interesting too, just to work in like one of the last quotes that he said that I thought was great. He says, just find joy in what you do for the sake of it, and then recognize how you're being shaped in the process, and hopefully you become a better man through it. And yeah, it's so cool that he's been such an inspiration, and literally all he's really done his whole life is just find joy in it, and that it for him was skateboarding. So yeah, connect with it.
I mean, it may come off a little campy, but I do believe that if you're doing things for the right reasons, and the right reasons, I guess that leaves it pretty wide open. But if it's just for your fulfillment and joy, and it's positive, the other things fall into place. And if you're focusing on the right part of your actions or your passions, I find everything else will fall in place the way that it's meant to be. That's how I feel.
Yeah,
I think that happens because of what focusing on that thing that fills you up, that you love, does to how you interact in the rest of your daily life.
Yeah.
I think like it's so important. Like that thing, you have to have something that's for you. We talked about external validation and all of those things, and how ultimately they just make you sick.
Yeah.
Because they're not for you. You're trying to get somebody to tell you that you're good enough, and it doesn't really fulfill you. And you've stopped focusing on the things that did, and you get pulled farther from them, and then you're not really well.
Things compound, and you can get pretty far away.
Yeah, it's a powerful thing when you create the space for what fills you up. And it takes a long time to learn that in some instances.
Yeah, easier said than done.
At least for me.
No question.
And life doesn't always allow for the space too. So like it's not always just the person not creating the space either. Sometimes circumstances and all that stuff.
That's a good point.
Not in a vacuum.
Yeah. So nice summary to that. Find the little moments, if that's all you can get. Yeah.
Next, please.
I also bring a lot of what I know about Rodney Mullen through Stacy Peralta's documentary, his autobiography about the Bones Brigade. And that's when it took sort of, I didn't really know Rodney Mullen's story other than he was this professional skater and in one of the greatest movies ever created, Gleaming the Cube. And, I knew who he was as the skateboarder, not the person. And then I watched an autobiography, which was, I thought really cool too, because I loved the Bones Brigade. And that was the first time I heard Rodney Mullen speak.
Yeah.
Eloquently, passionately, like in this clip. And kind of gave you a glimpse into how skateboarding began for him, on the farm alone, on his concrete pad.
Yeah.
Anyways, that was gave me the first glint of like, wow, there's a lot here. This is a story. This is a person. So I think that's an interesting. His background is interesting to me.
We didn't really talk about his background. I meant to try to get into it, but
yeah.
So I guess the whole idea is that his dad didn't want him to do it, and was really intense about it. And he kept having to prove that this is something that he can do and that he wants to do, and that is like a financial,
right?
Like it can be a career, and it was really, really difficult, and there was a lot of head games, I think, played.
I think so, and yeah, like we'll allow it under these controls and circumstances.
I think it broke his brain though, because I think he was, generally like a follow the rules, good kind of kid, and it was just so hard for him because his passion was pulling him, and then his dad was just like, this is what's right, and that what's right sentiment was pulling him the other way. So,
and they also talk a little bit about back in those times. Well, I'm sure it's the same now, but the Bones Brigade would be on a tour of the country, and
yeah, they were like rock stars.
Yeah, and they'd foray into Europe as well. But I remember him saying one story of they're all in a van or a car like Tony Hawk and, at the pinnacle of skateboarding.
Yeah.
In maybe more extrinsic terms. And something was happening, or he just reached this moment where he was like, I got to get out of here. And I think he opened up the window of the door.
Yeah, they're like in a desert or something.
And ran off.
He ran away, yeah.
He just needed to get away from...
But that speaks to him. He talks about how like he wants to be alone. He has that in him. He needs and I get that. Like he craves that alone time.
And I don't want to put too fine a point on this, and you touched on this, and I don't want to come off as one-dimensional, every road leading to either Arby's, Gleaming the Cube, or John Frusciante and the Red Hot Chili Peppers. However, it's interesting to draw that link too, and I didn't think about it till I sat down here tonight. I mean, John Frusciante is passionate for music, music, obviously the guitar, but many others. And when the Red Hot Chili Peppers were at their sort of peak of absolute, monetary, like all the awards, he was like, this isn't like, I really see a comparison of like, he was like, this isn't the source for me. We're doing things that aren't creative. We're not pushing ourselves past. We're just doing what got us to this point. Yeah. And he walked away twice for it. So
that was also, the first one was very drug fueled though.
Well, yeah, I mean, yes, there were other factors, no question. Yeah. But I think, if you think of the contact point, I think he would probably say, we were just going through the paces. We're being quote unquote rock stars instead of musicians pushing and being true to ourselves, and maybe Rodney Mullen would feel the same way.
I think there's something to be said about getting to that space of creativity when you spend so much time alone creating and focusing. That's uber focus. I think it changes you, and it makes you awake to not caring about what others think, and you're doing he wasn't making, it's not a snub to the fans or throwing away the trophies or leaving the Chili Peppers. It's not a snub to the fans. It's trying to be honest to their art. It's interesting. Yeah,
I think that's
look
cool.
at us getting there.
Yeah, I resonate with the whole needing space thing. Like I find, like I have to unplug as well. I find like I'm an extrovert, but after a certain amount of time being out in the world is like a radio station that's off the station, or a radio dial that's off the station. And like, I just have to kind of recalibrate, find my space. Like it has to have an ebb and flow to me. I can show up better as myself when I have that time to like reset. And with the creative process, I've recently come to realize when I've had that reset as well, like that's when these ideas pop in my head. And when I'm out in the chaos and just continually in it, that stuff doesn't come up. I'm just exhausted and drained, and it's not an endless well of like coming up with ideas and stuff. You really do have to be left alone, and not in a negative way. Like I think it's how you naturally need to process through things as well.
Time.
Yeah.
Give it to yourself. Yeah.
Nova Kooks. Surf tips.
Yeah, for our surf tips today. For our surf tip today.
What is it?
For our surf tip today, we're going to talk about being afraid to nosedive. And full disclaimer, when I'm coming up with surf tips, I kind of browse some surf lesson kind of social media pages.
I Google it and take the top hit.
And not the top one. What makes sense and what we connect with, and what would be helpful for people to hear us blabber on about. So today's is being afraid to nosedive, and I thought that was really fitting because, we're talking about pain and we're talking about greatness and stuff, and I feel like this fear of nosediving for me was I entered this stage of being able to surf and then going out to the green waves, to get those glassy ones, and they're bigger. And a couple times I nosedived and then got stuck under there, and it's not fun, and it's scary. And you've witnessed me get hit in the head by my board before. I've witnessed you get hit in your head with your board before.
When you witnessed me, it was like, Jared, look what I did. And then 5 seconds later, the board just smashes
You're
down on
standing
top
there
of my
walking
head.
towards me, and the board's behind you, and I'm like, no, look.
And then, boom.
It's just like
It would be like
closing a book on his head.
what was that? What was that movie where the guy died and they carried the dead body around? Weekend at Bernie's.
Weekend at Bernie's.
It would be if I was like Bernie out there, like, "Hey, I did it," and then this board just
whack
destroys me. Yeah, stupid.
So once you get to a point where you're able to paddle out and get past broken waves, it's now time for the bigger green waves and that bigger unbroken wave. One of the scariest things about catching those waves is the fear of nosediving. So I wanted to quickly chat about being afraid of nosedives today with you guys. So on the Barefoot Surfer on Instagram, I think that's what they're called, the Barefoot Surf, I think. It's really cool. They have a lot of really good surf tips. And what they said was that there's misconceptions about nosedives that can cause multiple issues and bad habits. One that's very common is that new surfers will move backwards on their surfboards thinking that they are nosediving because of having too much weight towards the nose. It then becomes extremely difficult as you create loads of drag and can't match the wave speed. Don't be afraid to nosedive. Let go of what your instincts are telling you. And then I just sort of want to add that, like, you need as much speed as possible to carry you and your weight on the water. So it's kind of like this magic little moment where the second you feel like you're nosediving, you stand up. That's the moment when it feels like the wave's pulling. You want to just stand. It's all about timing your pop-up. Did you guys have any questions, comments, concerns?
Well, there's two nosedives, right? Like, one is you should stand, but I've had also what I would call a nosedive when I'm up on it, and all of a sudden I'm like, it's big enough that I should be riding down it, and I'm just like, oh, and then
going under.
Does it close on you?
Yeah.
And that's common
And
for here.
I nosedive in that. Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, this is not going to be good. Because I get up on it and you could see like the in my face, and then I'm gone. So, but yeah, the other one that one sucks. Because when it happens to me, I don't feel like I have the momentum, but all of a sudden this wave has scooped me.
Yeah.
And now I'm at this like 50-degree angle, and I'm still laying on the board, and I'm thinking, I better hold my breath now. Because you get pinned by those.
Well, I got stuck in it, and when we went to LA, that's when I kind of got over it. I kept telling Mike, I have the yips, man. Give me a sec. And then he what did he say? Breathe and stand up. That's what he said. Yeah.
I still have a bit of a fear of getting pinned by them, though. Like, I've had a few times.
It's healthy to have that respect to the ocean.
I've gotten pinned. I say pinned. It sounds all dramatic. It's not. But I've been held under for like, I'd say 40 seconds before. And that was enough when I didn't already have a good breath. And you're just tumbling. This wasn't around here.
That was in Australia, right?
Yeah, I don't think I've been held under that long here. But I've been held under long enough here to still be scared of some of the
Well, that was like your
waves.
first surf experience.
Oh,
too.
yeah.
And then when you heard us all surfing, you weren't in because I think you
Probably
said you
because
had
of
a
that.
bit
Yeah.
It was there.
Yeah. I've been held under a few times here where it gave me, I got shot straight back to that moment and remembered and was thinking, oh yeah.
Did you ever have nosedive fears, Dave?
Absolutely. I think probably the biggest thing that scares me is when you're nosediving, your board's coming behind you.
Yeah.
So I'm never too concerned about going into the water like that. That's not my fear. My fear is what's coming behind you. So I think my only feeling with that is like I turtle pretty quick. Like I grab on my head.
Get your
Me
elbows
too.
over your head.
Me too.
That's sort of my go-to, and you know, a board hitting your arm is going to hurt a lot, but
Yeah.
it's better than getting whacked in the head with your board. So as long as you're aware of that, I feel like
Good argument for foam boards.
I have a reaction of like I totally do the turtle thing.
Yeah.
But I have a fear of just the fin ripping up the backside of my head.
sure, yeah, yep, that's
it's
fair.
legit. Every time I'm like immediate, just
Oh yeah, yeah.
holding my head
Yeah.
because
those
it's so
longboard
narrow
fins are
and
so-
so
yeah.
sharp.
And hard. It's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like a blade. It is a blade coming at you. A big fiberglass, like.
Oh yeah, a lot of momentum behind it.
Oh man. Well, that was one time I nosedive, and I thought you saw me, but then you saw me when I was all out of it and bleeding from the back of my head, and like, I think you need to drive home.
How do you feel about the nosedive trials?
I remember when I first started it wasn't really big waves, but I do remember for me, it was a bit of positioning and I was like too far ahead and then I would get catapulted off the board, but it wasn't like too big. So it wasn't, it wasn't really too dangerous or anything. But it is something that I feel a bit anxious of in bigger waves. And it's not necessarily the nosediving, but I think it's kind of what you were saying, Josh, where you catch a wave but then it like closes out and then you're like going down, and then it's what David said, that where are you going and where's that board coming from? So yeah, always do that thing, which is a handy thing. Just like once you're under the water, just like cover your head, just make sure you're not, gonna hit your board or your fin or anything. But there've been like closeouts that because I have a longer board, which is great for buoyancy, but it really hurts when that board meets you when you're not expecting it. So I've had like pretty bad bruises on my legs, and I've kind of gotten hit in the head before. So I feel a bit, even with a fun board, I feel a bit less anxious with it. But when you have like a giant log, that can really do damage to you.
And I find I'm a 3-season surfer, so when I go out again in the spring, it's all foreign to a certain extent, and I realize how big the board is and how it gets caught by the waves, and you literally are out there with this log that wants to beat the crap out of you if you're not respecting it, I guess, or not. I don't want to use the word controlling it, but
I always feel when I haven't surfed for a while, and then my first time back out, like the other day, it was the first time in a month and a half, not quite 2 months, about a month and a half. It was the first time I don't know, Christmas is busy, but I go slow. I wasn't, I was giving myself time to get reacquainted with like the feelings again. I wasn't jumping right into it. And that's brings me to my next point, is like when you're beginning, just like, take your time, spend your time in like the whitewash and stuff before you jump into those bigger waves. Like you got to be ready for it. You got to be strong. You have to have the fitness for it too.
A lot of fun can be had in the whitewash. So I'll ask you guys, the waves you're talking about in my mind are 5 feet plus, probably. Is probably the range we're talking about.
That's enough to nosedive, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so you see that wave coming, you're paddling, you've lined yourself up so you're going to catch whichever way it's cutting. And you catch it, you're going with it, and we're talking milliseconds at this point. But you've said that moment where you feel the nosedive, you're still on your stomach, you should pop up. And that's where I struggle with the bigger waves, because that tip happens fast. Like you go from horizontal to like a 45 or 50 degree slope when you catch this thing, and it starts to push you. The last thing in my mind is thinking, oh, I should stand. I'm going to catch this one and ride down it. And so I hang on too long, and then I nosedive. So it sounds like what you're saying.
Well, you create drag because you start this instinct takes place where you want to start backing up because you want to like counterbalance that and have it not happen.
But let's pretend you don't. Like, it happens fast.
Yeah.
I'm not on my feet. I'm on my chest. I haven't popped up yet. In theory, when the board tips, I should think I've caught the wave, jump up. And then when I jump up, the next feeling I'm going to have is still that descent, because I've caught them before. Mm-hmm. And I think, holy crap, this thing's moving and I need to come down it.
Yeah, but you got to stay low and balanced, right?
Yeah, but you still have to come down and cut, right? Mm-hmm. So really the two things I'm learning in this moment are when you feel that sort of tip, get up and then position yourself so you can...
Well, you're first going to feel the pull, which is the first like hint.
Yeah, I don't know. I get you would call it a pull. I don't think I'm good enough to interpret the pull yet. I would say I just feel the catch and I'm about to... if I could get on my feet, I could ride it down or ride it out, however you want to express it. And I've caught some bigger ones, and that's where I struggle, is because it's so different to catch a 2 or 3 foot wave versus like 5-ish plus, because you have that slanted, sloped ride first. Mm-hmm. And it's so different. I've yet to kind of...
I've learned that from you, David, by watching you, because you're so low when you do it, when you first get on it.
And it's all time and building up
experience,
everything, but you reach a point eventually you're not going straight per se anymore. You're right from the get-go have figured out if you're going to go right or left.
Yeah, that helps to get rid of the...
You've lined yourself out.
Yeah. You've cut the height down because
of the diagonal you're on.
Yeah. So it's not as saying. Relatively falling versus traversing.
Because you've set yourself up and have started to paddle in the direction.
Point. You don't want to go straight. You want it. You really do have to try to turn.
You're moving in the direction of the wave, and so it's not trying to flip you. It's trying to carry you. That's
exactly.
the difference. Yeah.
And just by angling, you're I'm not going to say you're cutting the height in half, because I don't mean that, but perceptually it feels like you are.
I get what you're saying.
And the speed that once you catch it, the speed you're going, like you're going to be less likely to be tossed because you've locked it in. You're on the speed and you're moving on the line.
Yeah, I can't explain it. You're almost moving on this horizontal energy plane of the wave instead of being at that edge where the wave's cutting to the right and you're still at a 90 degree to it, and it just wants to destroy you. Yeah, that's interesting. Good tip.
Let's go surfing.
Apparently the surf is supposed to be really good now-ish or soon.
Yes.
It was really good yesterday.
Tomorrow night it'll be really big.
And there's a couple of good days coming. Next week has a lot of good green happening on the old magic seaweed.
I guess by the time this gets out, some of us will surf. I won't have.
I'm not going to be... Which is a good point. Sorry, everybody. Life happens. It was hard. We lost our little schedule there. So we've kind of decided, I think, as a group that when we're not going to stop creating, but when we have an episode and it gets edited, it'll then be released.
You'll receive it.
Yeah. And that's okay.
Oh, yeah.
Give Jared Bear a break. Yeah, well, I think we've come to that amazing point in the evening where we get to have Charles give us a question. So fire away, Charles.
This is Charles.
This week's question: how do you feel about sweaters?
So on topic.
And I assume we're talking sweaters, not sweatshirts.
Not sweatshirts, sweaters.
Thank you.
So we're talking like V-necks, crew cuts.
Can you have a quarter zip?
No.
Even if it's a sweater material?
What about a sweater that has like It's cut like this, but it's that material. It's cut like a
Yeah, and
collar.
I suppose maybe something like this with some buttons is okay. Kind of a
Cardigan?
traditional
Okay.
sweater.
I have my answer.
One might call it a jumper.
I guess if one was in
That's
Isn't a
in,
jumper
in,
with
England or Ireland, yeah.
Isn't a jumper with legs and like a whole upper body my jumper?
Well, that would be a type of jumper, but in Ireland
Not
and
the
the UK,
traditional
they
jumper.
call a sweater a jumper.
Oh, I've never been to Ireland or the UK. Someday.
Nova Kooks do a deep dive on the history of the sweater.
The history of sweaters.
My answer then is that I don't like sweaters. I don't wear them.
No, why?
Now that I like the look of them, and I like the concept of them. I just don't feel comfortable in them, and I don't like how they fit me. I am not super tall, so I kind of look like Humpty Dumpty in a sweater.
So just sort of like the way the fit and the feel
Yeah, it
just doesn't
work for me.
Humpty Dumpty was a big fat egg.
I do have a big head as well. I don't. Josh doesn't do sweaters well.
Okay.
Yeah. I like them though on other people. Like you look very sophisticated
You look
tonight.
great this evening in your
Thank you. You do
jumper.
look
Fantastic.
I've
in a
looked at you a few
sweater.
times and thought, gee,
I thought someone
Look at
was
this
checking me
fella.
out.
Is that a burgundy?
Looks
No,
brown
this is
from
brown.
here.
Oh, okay.
It's totally
Is that a
not burgundy.
maroon? Sir.
Sorry, the lights are low in here. Yeah.
Josh, not Jared, sorry, Jared, David.
Who are you?
He's all thrown off by the compliment on his sweater.
What are you asking?
Sweaters, yes or no?
Yes.
How do you feel about sweaters?
I'm okay with sweaters. I think that, living in a colder climate as we do at a nice, like, casual, semi-formal event, popping on a sweater over your collared shirt, like, it passes and it's easy and you just stay cozy. Yeah.
I have one more thing to add.
Oh,
Sorry.
it's okay.
This is important. I don't like sweaters because they suck up the smells of food.
Oh.
Oh, right. Okay.
Think of going to
It is.
Subway and then your jacket smells for 2 days. Hate that. Sweaters, terrible. They hold moisture and smells.
And it seemed with Jared, with your answer, it seemed like you like the social idea of a sweater, but personally,
Oh. Like, I don't think that you're going to catch me in a sweater, like, on a Sunday afternoon, unless I'm at an event that's more formal. Yeah.
so
Unless he's hosting a potluck.
I think it's tied more to a formal. I may wear a sweater Christmas Eve to impress my mother-in-law, just so she knows that
Okay.
I'm putting a little bit of effort in.
See, now that feels fitting
Yeah.
for when you would wear a sweater.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's Christmas time, the family.
I'm going on my wife.
Trying to pretend you're somebody you're not.
I'm going on
Just
my wife's birthday. We're doing a big date, going for a fancy meal.
You think
you
you'll
gonna
wear
bring out
a
a
sweater?
sweater?
Well, because of the weather these days, it would seem appropriate for that event as well.
Or do you
Seems
think
like
now,
attire.
or will you drape it over your shoulders and cross the arms around your neck?
No, I won't do that. No. I will say this, that whenever I do wear a sweater, for me personally, I have to be wearing a collared shirt as well, because I find most sweaters are made of a material that gives me like itchies. Yeah,
Fair.
that's how I feel. So yeah.
David?
That's going to lead nicely into my. It's going to lead real nicely in.
Can't wait to hear the
So,
connection.
for I would say I was going to say 75. I'm going to quantify this. For 85% of my life, I vehemently opposed the sweater,
Oh, okay.
based solely on the materials that they are typically made out of.
Yep.
The materials that they're made out of make them look great, but they don't make them feel great. And I don't like wearing shirts under other shirts. If I'm wearing a shirt, that's the shirt I'm wearing. And most sweaters are of a wool itch to them, and I cannot exist under those conditions. However, there are some companies who make wonderful sweaters wool sweaters.
Yep.
Seemingly on the outside, but they're nice and soft on the inside. They look good.
Smart wool.
Like lined?
Maybe lined, but just,
Maybe they're
I don't know,
smart
a
wool.
softer wool. Like
Smart wool.
maybe smart wool.
That New Zealand smart wool.
Yeah. Like
They're
a
doing it
cable
right.
knit, like a cable knit sweater.
A what knit sweater?
Like a cable knit, it's got sort of the design in it and the
A cable knit. Oh, the ones with those
Stylized.
crosses and
the downhill ski
whatnot.
sweaters.
Yeah.
The
I am
1980s downhill ski
I am
sweaters.
now all for them because companies have decided people don't like to be itchy.
Right.
And now I've gotten on board.
Do you
I'm
have
in.
such sweaters?
I have at least 3.
Oh.
I wear them to speak to the context. I wear them mostly to work ish. If I woke up on a Saturday, I was going to go, hang out or do some work around the house. I'm not putting on a sweater.
Yep. Fair enough.
However, if I'm going to work or maybe a dinner or on a cold night,
Yeah.
I'm throwing on one of these sweaters.
Okay. Nice.
So it depends on what it's made
Well, you
out
have a collared shirt underneath, or you're just wearing the sweater?
I'm just wearing a sweater.
Yeah. Okay.
But that's me.
Okay. And no t-shirt on underneath or anything? Just
Nope.
pure. Okay.
I'm straight up,
Okay. Cool.
which people have told me is weird, but it's just what I like.
No, you know what? You saying that and noticing how you're dressed this evening. I gotta say, when you get a new fresh hoodie
Mm.
and you wear that without a t-shirt underneath, you just let that soft material hit you.
Yeah.
That's
Sweet.
cozy town.
Sweet.
You
That
are-
lasts for about 5 washes and then
Yeah, but I make a point to do that. Yeah.
Speaking of a new hoodie, I like a new hoodie unwashed because it has that stiffness to it that creates space. Very enjoyable.
Nice.
And I like the smell of a
So
new
Charles,
hoodie.
you're wearing a lovely sweater this evening.
Thank you.
And I'm assuming you're for them, but I also assume that you have something great to add.
Well, I have mixed feelings about sweaters.
I'm going to guess that one was a gift and you're wearing it because you have it.
No, this is
No?
the first sweater I've bought.
Don't project,
in,
Josh.
Sorry.
bought in a
Sorry.
few years. So much like you guys, like aesthetically, like the look of sweaters on board. Material, totally agree. Typically itchy, not the most pleasant thing. If I am wearing a sweater, I'm going to be wearing a t-shirt underneath it as well, because it can, as you're saying, Josh, it could like absorb potentially like soupy smells,
Oh,
but
the
also
worst.
coming the other direction, like, if you're sweating a bit, it can kind of get in the material. And one of the things that I think is particularly challenging about sweaters is the cleaning of them or the maintenance, because it's not like you can just pop them in the washers. Usually some of them, they want to be like hand washed, and that if you're drying those, then they're stretching out.
Gotta put 'em on that gentle
It's
one.
a whole once committing to a sweater, you see a sweater, it's you think like, oh, that's a nice sweater, that would be a nice thing to wear on a cold day. But it's this whole other level of commitment and maintenance that goes along with it. So I do get an occasional sweater. Usually we'll wear them in a bit more of a like smart casual context.
Smart casual.
But I want to love sweaters, but it's all the baggage that kind of comes with sweaters that I
Couldn't
can't
agree more.
I can't say I'm totally on board with them.
So you're struggling with what you're wearing, and that's where your question came from.
No.
You're like sitting there like itching.
I've got a question for these guys.
I want to know.
I felt like it was appropriate to wear the sweater tonight to provide an example and context to the question.
I respect that.
This is pre-planned. I see now.
Did you change before you came over?
I did. Yeah. I was wearing a hoodie earlier, and then I broke out the sweater.
Nice.
I like that. I like that.
So are we? So sweaters,
I think
yay
we're
or nay? We'll go around. We'll go with Josh. Sweaters.
They also lose their shape and get this droopy, stretched out look to them. After
That's
a
the
while.
drying part.
Oh my god!
So
I'm a nay. Oh nay nay, as John Panette would say.
Jared, Sweaters, yay or nay?
Situationally, yay.
Yay or nay overall?
Commit.
Not situationally, yay or nay? Thumbs up or thumbs down?
Oh, man,
Let it out.
Yay or nay?
I'll just say yay.
Okay.
Yay.
David?
Yay.
Yay as well. So that's 3 yays, 1 nay for sweaters.
Are
from
you
the Nova
satisfied
Kooks.
with it? You're satisfied with
Triple
this?
yay.
I
How's this played
think
out?
so. You're on the fence. Are you satisfied? You're sticking with your yay?
I'll be honest.
But
You all had the most disgusted sounding yays I've ever heard.
Yay.
Do you like sweaters?
yay. I think. Well, I just like I said, like I'm not gonna wear a sweater tomorrow. I wear them for a purpose, like yeah. I got 2 that are similar to what you're wearing: a green one and a burgundy one.
Nice.
Yeah, and yeah, I'm not throwing them out because they're so useful for those events that.
Timeless.
Okay.
It's a timeless classic.
And I just wash them on a gentle wash, and I lay them to dry on a drying rack. I don't hang them.
See, you can
Okay.
do that with an item of clothing you wear 2 times a year. But if you want to put those into regular rotation, it's just annoying.
A lot of work.
Yeah. I don't know how people did it back in the day.
I just washed a whole
all
bunch of
those
my
sweaters.
wife's
They were in
sweaters.
trouble.
My wife's on the sweater tip this winter.
Sweater tip?
Is that where you just wear the neck piece or
It
something?
was just slang. I was just using some
You're
hip-hop
using sweater
slang.
That's
slang?
what all the kids are saying.
That's what the kids say.
The sweater tip.
I'm on that guitar tip these days, playing
That's
lots
right.
of guitar.
George Bryan.
Bye. Bye,
mind.
Josh. Don't you get started.
Do you guys remember Dickies?
Yeah. Oh, my God.
Are they the fake?
It's a fake turtleneck
Yep.
you'd pull over to wear under your sweater.
Oh,
Yep.
my buddy just told me a
right.
story. He was at Christmas dinner with his brother, and his brother's washing the dishes, and he's like, "Oh, Scott, man, it's getting really hot in here. Do you find it hot?" He just hold this for a second and hands him the scrub brush, and then pops off a dickie out of his sweater.
Nice.
And
Was he waiting for that moment?
he was waiting
yes,
for it. He had
was.
pre-planned that
Cousin
moment.
Eddie from National
Yeah.
Lampoon's
Yeah.
Christmas Vacation.
Oh, in the Christmas Vacation, you could see the outline.
It was
of
a white. It was a white.
awesome.
Oh my God, Dickies.
I think you can buy that as like a costume.
I'm
Christmas or
sure of
something.
it. Yeah. Yeah, Dickies.
Man, I knew the second he said it that we would go off on sweaters for way too long.
Yeah.
All right, let's call it there, fellas. We've been the Nova Kooks. I've been Jared.
I'm still David.
Charles.
Still Josh. Goodbye.
Yeah.
How do you feel about sweaters?
Thanks for joining the Nova Kooks. We hope you've enjoyed our episode. Be sure to give us some love on Instagram. You may have noticed a delay in our releases. We promise we aren't going anywhere. We will release content when we have it, so keep your ears peeled wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks and be well.